Today on Joe, we are fortunate enough to be joined by none other than All Blacks legend and current Laureus Sports Chairman, Sean Fitzpatrick. How are you, Sean?
Very good, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me along. I've actually been, the House of Rugby have tried to get me down here, but that particular, Alex, wasn't successful. You've done well.
Well, one has been then. One has been. If we kick off, Sean, with the Guinness Six Nations, France have obviously impressed people, have won their first two games in triumphant manner as well. A lot of people have put that down. A lot of people in Wales have put that down to the appointment of Sean Edwards as defence coach. But surely it goes beyond that.
Yeah, it's been so difficult watching France over the last 10 years in terms of they have such talent. But just don't seem to deliver that on the track. They don't seem to be fit enough. They seem very disorganised, and because they have the talent. And that's, I think, by having Gaultier. Gaultier's sort of built a team around him. I think Sean Edwards has definitely got a bit of structure, and they look fitter. And, I think the young kids that have come through, a lot of the under-20 players over the last few years, they've been hugely successful.
Well, what do you think has changed specifically? Because I went to England, France in the Six Nations last year. Mm-hmm. France got whitewashed completely, absolutely steamrolled last year. Now, this Guinness Six Nations, the understanding between players like Dupont, Olivon, Tamac, what has changed specifically, do you think?
Well, I think they now want to play for France.
And England obviously responded to setback in that first defeat to France with victory over Scotland at the weekend. Obviously, Ellis Genge put his name in the headlines with the comments about sausages, just saying what comes to their head. Do you think that critics were too quick to write off England?
No, I don't think they wrote England off. I think, once again, there's an expectation after the way they performed against the All Blacks, and even throughout the World Cup, they performed very well. And there's a number of young, new international rugby players playing for England now that are very, very good. You could almost say world class in some cases. So once again, they need to turn up week in, week out, and a lot of them didn't turn up against the French.
There have been rumours in the press, particularly Southern Hemisphere press, I think in the New Zealand Herald, that South Africa could break away from the Rugby Championship and join the Guinness Six Nations. Do you think that's something that could happen?
Not if the players have got anything to do with it. I saw, they're obviously not very happy about that. Well, the Southern Hemisphere definitely would not want that. The All Blacks, Australia and Argentina would definitely not want South Africa to leave. They're a huge force. They're a great part of the history of the Southern Hemisphere rugby. And to lose them commercially, let alone the history of it, would be a major blow to Southern rugby.
Earlier this week as well, Eddie Jones said that he would not want any amendment to the makeup of the Six Nations as it is. Is that something you'd agree with? Would you make any changes? Introduce that motion relegation aspect?
I like it the way it is at the moment. There's an argument that the Georges of the world should be given the opportunity, as Italy was given the opportunity. So maybe the relegation system would work, but I'm not sure whether Scotland, Ireland, England or Wales would agree to that, potentially with the potential that they could be relegated, which would not be good for them. But, in terms of South Africa coming into the Seven Nations, it's just for me personally, in terms of the history of the Six Nations, the Five Nations, to have a Southern Hemisphere team, I think would take away what this great tournament has developed over the last few years.
Now, on to your involvement with Laureus Sport. You're actually chairman at the moment. Can you tell us a bit about your role with that?
I'm chairman of the academy. We're 20 years old. We're an organisation that was set up to celebrate excellence in sport, and there was 35 founder members. We now have 69 academy members. We have an awards once a year. From that, we also have the Sport for Good Foundation, which is just a phenomenal organisation where we are involved in about 150 charities globally that use sport as a power of change. And Nelson Mandela was our founding patron, and he gave us the words in person that sport has the power to change the world. So we wholeheartedly believe that, and we are going from strength to strength. Our slogan for this year, our 20th anniversary, is "Sport Unites Us."
In the context of Siya Kolisi becoming the first Black South African to lift the World Cup, How powerful is that with your statement for Laureus Sport, that sport unites all?
Well, it fits us so perfectly in terms of what we stand for, and the history of rugby in South Africa. I started my career in 1986. That was the time of the Cavaliers tour. I never thought I'd go to South Africa as an All Black or as a rugby player. And to go back there in '92 when the breakdown of apartheid, and before Mandela was even president, and then to see the change over those years, and then to play in that World Cup final in '95 when we lost to South Africa, and to drive away from that stadium and to see a black man, a white man dancing down the street, arm in arm, celebrating the success of the Springbok team in '95, led by one of the most inspirational people in Francois Pienaar, to have Mandela there, to watch that, and then fast forward to Tokyo, to Yokohama Stadium, and to see Sia lifting the World Cup. Once again, I go back to it, the power of sport is there for all people to see, how important it is that we use sport as a mechanism for change. And all those sort of things, to going to Sierra Leone, to saying to these children, you have the right to be children, to play sport, used as child combatants in the Civil War. Just horrendous stuff. But giving them the opportunity to go on a skateboard with Tony Hawk, to play rugby with me. But the big thing is they have the opportunity to dream. And that's what gets taken away, is the opportunity to dream. And sport can bring that back.
A lot of people put the All Blacks' success of, say, the last 10, 15 years, down to that humble mentality, the fact that they all cleaned the changing rooms after a training session or a game. That probably is key to success, isn't it, at the top level?
I think so, and it's, in the All Blacks, we talk about all these things, or people make a big thing about these things, but for us as New Zealanders and as All Blacks, it should be a given, and that's what the All Black jerseys, the mana of the jersey is about, the man that wears and the woman that wear these jerseys, that you have to be respectful of the people that have gone before you. Respect, humility, integrity, honesty. We shouldn't really need to discuss that. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to. And that being an All Black, is the most important thing. And you've seen it with teams that have been successful and then they drift off. To win the World Cups back-to-back is not easy, because you have huge success, and if a lot of those players are going through the next cycle, to turn that around, for the All Blacks to win in 2011 and in 2015, and then try to do it again last year, it was going to be a massive ask, and eventually it became too much.
Are there any players that you just really, who maybe don't play in your position, but you just really like enjoying watching?
Yeah, well, like Dupont. You mentioned Dupont earlier. I loved watching him. I always look back at Dan Carter, and that game in '05 against the Lions in Wellington. I just look at that and I think, wow, how cool was that? And I was there. I saw it. So games like that, and games I've played against the Serge Blancas of the world, and I still get the enjoyment of as he runs through. I can still remember games like that, that I played on. I was unfortunately involved in that game at Eden Park in '94 when they scored the try from the end of the earth. And you look back and you think, wow, that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I was the captain of the losing team, but I'm a real fan of sport. I love watching rugby. And I love watching good rugby.
What does the Northern Hemisphere side actually need to do then to win a World Cup now?
Well, they have to believe they can win, firstly. They have to have players of the calibre that played in that semi-final. They need to be able to get to that level week in, week out. And that's what, once again, the power of expectation, and that's what I loved about being an All Black, is that every game we played, we're expected to win. Every game we play, it's a World Cup final for the opposition. And that's a massive amount of pressure. But I love that. And long may that continue.
It's also your team talk done for you, isn't it, though, if you realise that psychologically every team is going to be thinking that coming up against you.
Yeah, that's good. So you have to be on your job, and if you've got 1 or 2 players that are 5% below where they need to be, you're going to get beaten. So it places a huge amount of pressure on your teammates that I need to demand from you that you are up there, and as we spoke about earlier, it's no player is bigger than the team. So if one player thinks he's getting bigger than the team, that is a massive downfall.
Do you think that's something that's missing from football/soccer?
I don't know, because I'm obviously not involved in any football teams, but you look at what Liverpool's doing at the moment. They've obviously got a huge belief that they want to win the premiership. That's their key goal, and they're going in the right direction. They have a number of very influential players.
They seem quite a grounded team as well, don't they? I don't think Klopp would allow any of those players.
No, and I think that's so important. The influence of the coach. It's like the influence of parents on their children. They're the role models. They set the example, and then you get to the senior players who are setting the example. And if you've got a coach that's setting a bad example and senior players that are setting a bad example, you're never going to win anything.
Thanks for joining us, Sean. Much appreciated.
Thank you.